met with Ray Rice and his representatives, it was ambiguous about what actually happened.
But what was ambiguous about her laying unconscious on the floor, being dragged out by her feet?
There was nothing ambiguous about that. That was the result that we saw. We did not know what led up to that. We did not know the details of that.
That was NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell back in September suggesting that Ray Rice had not disclosed all of the details of a domestic abuse incident to the NFL. But on Friday, a judge ruled that Rice did not mislead the NFL and should be reinstated to play. Meanwhile, Rice's wife, Janae, speaking out for the first time about that infamous elevator video. Joining us to talk about all of the developments are Kavitha Davidson. She's a sports columnist for Bloomberg View, and George Martin, former co-captain of the Super Bowl 21 champion New York Giants and former president of the NFL's Players Association. He's also the author of Just Around the Bend, My Story for 9/11. Great to have both of you here.
Good morning, Allison.
Okay, so Janae Rice is speaking out on NBC, and she addressed what we just saw, that moment where the commissioner, Goodell, says, we didn't know all of the details. We weren't in the, we had no clue about that. Here's what her response is to him saying they were in the dark. Watch this.
When the commissioner of the NFL, Roger Goodell, says Ray was ambiguous, and the NFL says that it was a starkly different sequence of events, is the commissioner lying?
I can't say he's telling the truth.
And you think the league and the commissioner covered their butts?
I think they did what they had to do for themselves.
All right, so Kavitha, Janae is obviously sort of choosing her words carefully. She doesn't want to throw Roger Goodell under the bus, but she's saying that he was being misleading.
Well, absolutely. And in her ruling, the U.S. District Judge who ruled in favor of Ray Rice in the appeal basically said that the NFL and the NFL's representatives that were present at the June meeting in which he claims that Ray Rice was misleading in his testimony, they basically didn't take careful enough notes. They weren't asking enough questions. They didn't need any clarification, or they didn't ask for any clarification on exactly what happened. And thankfully, there was a union representative present who did take proper notes, and she was able to kind of clarify exactly what happened. So, from that and from the claims that the league didn't actually see the second elevator video, it seems that there's either been incompetence in the investigation or just a willful ignorance on their part to be able to minimize what actually happened.
George, it sounds like they didn't want to know. They weren't asking probing questions because they didn't want to know the answers.
Well, I think when you look at the penalty was issued down, I think it was the fact that they didn't want to know. They didn't want to know the severity of it. But I think it's a sweet vindication for Ray, and I think that this gives him an opportunity to restore his career. And I hope that the NFL is wise enough not to compound the errors that they've already made by not allowing him to come back and earn a living for himself and his wife, Janae.
Kavitha, is there any evidence that they had seen the videotape at the NFL?
I mean, the Associated Press reported long ago that the tape was actually sent to the league office, that there was confirmation that they received
it. But do we know if they watched it?
We can't say that for sure, but I can't imagine, just common sense. I can't imagine nobody at the league office saw it. Or, if they didn't see it, then it was, as you said, they didn't want to know. They wanted to be able to have some kind of deniability when this issue actually came up.
So, George, he has been reinstated now, Ray Rice, yes. But what does that mean? Is there any team that's willing to take a chance and pick him up?
Well, I can't say if there's any team that's willing to pick him up. I can say that there are a multitude of teams that need the kind of talent that Ray possesses, and I think it would be a travesty if the NFL turned its back on this individual because he's paid his dues. He was forthcoming, as was stated earlier in this whole incident. So I think he's been vindicated. He should be allowed to come back and earn a living.
But do you think that will happen, Kavitha?
After Michael Vick came back and everything, I think that we've seen that, a public relations disaster can be mitigated if a player is talented enough. There's been talk that, last year was Ray Rice's worst of his career and that he's on the decline and, he hasn't played yet this season, but he's apparently in very good shape. And there are 4 teams that are reportedly interested in him, the Saints and the Colts being 2 of them. So we'll see. I wouldn't rule it out that we would see him on a field.
After this whole ugly incident, it started a national conversation about spousal abuse, domestic violence, and why men hit and why women stay. And Janae Rice is speaking out about this, and she just addressed what her reaction was after she saw the elevator video. So let's watch this.
We've only seen you months after the incident.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine that you were that calm when you started to realize exactly what happened in that elevator. Can you describe those emotions?
I was furious. We came home and we didn't talk the entire ride. Well, I didn't speak to him the entire ride home. He tried to talk to me. I didn't want to hear anything. I just knew he hit me and I was completely over it. I was done, didn't want to hear anything. I just didn't even want to entertain him, anything that he had to say, any explanation. Of course, in the back of my mind and in my heart, I knew that our relationship wouldn't be over because I know that this isn't us and it's not him.
George, it's interesting to hear her because she talks about her own ambivalence. First, she says, I was done, I was over, but then I knew our relationship wasn't over in my heart. Is it important for the Rices to talk about this publicly? Might that even help his future career?
I think it's not only important for the Rices to talk about it. I think it's given the nation a platform on which to talk about domestic violence. And I think, to the NFL's credit, you see that they're running some very poignant commercials now addressing domestic violence. And I think that we should not victimize Janae twice or continuously by denying her husband access to what he does so well, and that is to play professional football.
Do you think, Kavitha, that it helps Ray get picked up by a team if they come out and publicly share what their process is?
Well, absolutely. And it also shows that, he's taking steps to rehabilitate himself and to go to counseling and maybe understand how he can go forward in this relationship and in his own life. But I think it's very important that they come out and talk about this, as George said, because, this has started a national conversation. There are so many reasons why victims do stay in these situations. And, if Janae doesn't think that she's a victim, then she doesn't think that she's a victim. But it's important to hear her own mentality and her own psychology and just to try to get a better understanding of what is really a nebulous topic here.
Yes, that whole national conversation is the silver lining here that's come out of all this. George Martin, Kavitha Davidson, thanks so much for talking about all this. And we want to know, of course, what you think. Will any team pick up Ray Rice? Tweet us at New Day. Let's go over to Chris.
We have breaking news for you overnight.